Here we are back at it on a Saturday afternoon, live from Lusaka, Zambia. My special guest, who I'll introduce in a moment, is here today to talk about what he's done throughout his adult life to progress his career, become a great leader that people follow, and to do some great things in his companies. And basically, we'll get into that in a few minutes. But live on the Packard Network, I'm pleased to introduce Mr. Bedah Salasini from Lusaka, Zambia. And Bedah is currently the Chief Executive Officer at Entrepreneurs Financial Center, Zambia. So he's on top of this company, which serves thousands of small, medium-sized, and micro businesses in the country. And he's a significant contributor to the company. He and his team are. And Bedah and I also had the opportunity to work together many years ago in Zambia and Southern Africa as well. Bedah has 26 years of professional experience cutting across many different countries in Africa as well. And so, Bedah, we're really pleased to have you on the program today, and thanks for taking the time to join.
Thank you, Brett. Thank you very much. And thank you very much for inviting me on the Packard Network. And it's really a pleasure for me to catch up with you again. Thank you.
Terrific. Good. Bedah, could you take just a couple of minutes and maybe walk us through the journey that you've been on, maybe starting with when you turned into an adult, and maybe walk us through some of the key highlights and what you've done to prepare yourself to be a CEO now.
Thank you, Brett. Yeah, so look, my adult journey, obviously something I'll describe as unconventional because, by training, I trained as an engineer, actually electrical and electronic engineering, back in university. But I have really never quite practiced engineering, if you might want to know. So in my early career, I went straight into IT, into networking for a couple of years, and thereafter, entered into banking, financial services. And I've been in the financial services since then, since around 1998 to date. So trained as an engineer, never practiced as one, and spent all of my career in banking.
How did you wind up? Just out of curiosity, back then you were obviously much younger, and starting out your career, and you went to work for, I think, a mining company, right?
Absolutely. So I started off my career in the mining company. Yeah, absolutely.
And how did you wind up in financial services from that? I mean, those two are quite different.
Yeah, it's interesting, Brett. It's one of those interesting career decisions you make, as an entry level, career person. So coming out of university with an engineering degree, and then I saw the evolution of the financial services in the country in the mid to late 90s. Most of the banks then were just beginning to set up, a lot of technology infrastructure, automating. And evolving with the technology. So I thought that would be a good place for me to go and apply. Probably, you could argue, part of my engineering training, but also get a chance to diversify, my career prospects. So it was quite an intentional decision. So I've got my engineering degree, it's in the bag. What about acquiring new skills along the journey? And I think that decision has proved quite invaluable for me. Because I'm more or less, three persons in one. I could choose to work in an engineering firm if I wanted to, based on my academic qualification. I could choose to work in an IT firm, based on my early career experience. But then I could also choose to work in financial services, which is what I've done for the last 26 years. So I think it was a very good, deliberate, early career decision that I made.
Yeah, that's terrific. And I think you've just defined the power of versatility, right?
Absolutely.
Many people, there's obviously back then when you made the step from your education into mining and then the step into financial services. Again, very different steps along the way. Did you view those steps as risky at all, or what was your mindset back then?
Yeah, I've taken quite a few risks, Brett. Obviously,
Yeah.
calculated risks.
Mhm.
I mean, look, for example, when I left, the mines after spending 2 years there, built, a good career, good credibility, good performance track record. So having decided to then, move into commercial banking was a risk, because then I had to sort of put behind all of the credibility and performance track record that I've built over the years and start afresh. So that in itself sometimes could be a tough career decision. It is risky, but obviously, with hindsight now, with the risk comes plenty of opportunities, because then, look what it is now. So I'm a CEO in the financial services with an engineering and a mining background. So I think that was a great opportunity that came alongside taking some risks along the way.
Yeah, that's great. And just for the benefit of some of the audience, a big part of which has not been to Zambia, maybe you could just talk very briefly about the significance that mining has to the country.
Yeah, I'm sure most people listening, to this discussion is that they should know that Zambia is predominantly, driven, by mining. So we are for many years we've been the largest producer of copper in Africa, and obviously the economy has been, predominantly dependent on the copper mining in terms of the foreign exchange earnings, and yeah, so the copper mining industry in this country is big, and now obviously more than ever before with the buoying copper prices, the country is poised to benefit even more, from the rising and attractive commodity prices now.
Mm-hmm. Good. Okay, great. Okay, Bedah, maybe just why don't you continue with your journey there in financial services? Sorry. Why don't you just continue on with how you moved from different banks and specific financial companies leading up to EFC?
Yeah, it was quite, thanks, Brett. It was quite rapid progression. So I've left the mines in around 1998 and joined one of actually now the largest, retail bank in the country, the Zambia National Commercial Bank, partially owned by the government. Actually, then it was fully owned by the government. So I spent a couple of years there, as would be the case for any, sort of early career person, young man. I moved on pretty quickly, obviously driven by a lot of ambition, driven with a hunger to develop quickly and progress my career. So I left Zambia National Commercial Bank after a year or two to join, Standard Chartered Bank, an international bank, for career reasons. And obviously it turned out to be that was probably one of the best career decisions, I made in my early stages. So I joined Standard Chartered in 1999, and I was there for, just a little under 10 years, rising through different positions from, information technology going into mainstream operations until I became a member of the senior leadership team, the executive management team in 2002. And I left Standard Chartered in 2006, again, for another quite attractive career prospect to join another international bank, Barclays, where I had another, terrific, 9-year career at a senior executive level until, again, about 2015, during which time I had opportunities, obviously, to work in a couple of countries, including at the regional office in Johannesburg. And upon return to Zambia, Brett, in 2016, I joined a local mortgage house, the Zambia National Building Society, as the deputy MD and chief operating officer. for a couple of years. And then what I call an accident happened because I got a call to join a microfinance institution. And initially I thought it was a joke because I never really imagined myself to leave mainstream commercial banking to get into microfinance institution. But I could tell you, Brett, now that this probably has been, look, the most fulfilling career I've had. It's only 3 years I've been in microfinance institutions now, but probably the most fulfilling now. So that is really the journey.
Why is it more fulfilling? Like, just in your own words, why is that? Yep.
It's an interesting question, Brett. Two things. First of all, I spent 2 decades in mainstream banking, and I never knew there was this other, type of banking, if you like. But most importantly is that I think that the client segments that had become used to serving, working in commercial banks is completely different from the client segments that we deal with. This is an opportunity I've had to see how the real economy functions really for me. And for a country like Zambia, which is heavily reliant on MSMEs as a growth engine for the economy, and getting to see where some of the so-called medium enterprises as defined by commercial banks are coming from, then you begin to feel, hey, this is where the real impact is, right? So 2 decades in a commercial bank, 3 years in a microfinance institution, and I realized that really, really, it's much more fulfilling to get a micro client that starts from a very low base and grow them up into a small enterprise, into a medium enterprise, and obviously what happens, then the large banks come in and get the client. So I find that very fulfilling because that is impacting the real economy for me. And I never had this experience before. So that's number one. The second thing is just the learning that you go through. So the segments that we serve, Brett, a completely different risk profile. And the skills that you need to service those clients is something you learn by going through it. It's not something you learn from the book. And I found that very, very, very fulfilling. It's a different kind of skills because these are very, high risk, sort of clients. And obviously, naturally, the risk appetite for commercial banks to save, that client segment is very low. So we as microfinance institutions go in there, so we acquire the skills to underwrite this type of credit and get that credit to perform successfully. How do we do that? So for me to have been able to get that exposure in the last 3 years and working with a fantastic team at EFC, has been probably the most fulfilling career, journey I've been through, Brett, without a doubt. And I go back and say, very big decision I made.
Yeah, I think I can relate to what you're saying, Bedah. Helping people succeed, there's not a better feeling than that. And you're doing something that helps people, as you mentioned, from the very beginning, right? In many cases of their business, and help them, and you stay with them, and in a way nurture them to greater success, right? And I think that's a terrific fulfillment. And then secondly, the best bankers, as we used to always say, are the best risk managers. End of story. I think that there's been a couple of global shocks that have certainly reminded the industry of that. And those that have sharpened their skills and done many of the things to diversify their skills like you've done have benefited from that transition of what we might have called a traditional banker to a risk management banker. And that's really where the rewards are nowadays with ROI, et cetera, and with scarce capital. So that's great, Bedah. So how big is your team now? How large is EFC Zambia?
So EFC Zambia, so we have plus or minus 160 colleagues, fantastic group of professionals that I have, and that's one thing that really drives me forward, and that's one thing that gives me the energy every day to turn up and do what we're doing now. hugely successful business. We've had, for example, to scale through the COVID environment with very solid results. Remained liquid throughout the period. Well capitalized and profitable. One of the few financial institutions that remained solidly profitable during a very difficult period. Now that comes because we've built over the years, a solid base of loyal clients that we serve, that we've assisted even through the very difficult, COVID environment. A very dedicated team of staff that, quite honestly, any CEO, would be proud, to have a team like I have now, because otherwise it would have been completely impossible to do what we're doing now.
It's all about people, isn't it? At the end of the day,
absolutely,
and leadership that can, plant those seeds that, I think you're reaping the benefits of work that was done a few years back, right? Many years ago, to build that team so that they can get through a rough period of COVID. And I think that's a great tribute to your leadership and that of your executive team, as well. That's great. Yeah. Bedah, let's shift around and get into the real meat of today's conversation, which is all of this wonderful success that you've talked about. And I think that there's not one viewer watching this right now that's saying, wow, I can't believe that he's done all of this, starting off in mining and progressed all the way to the top of a prominent microfinance company in Zambia, CEO. Did it happen by luck, Bedah? Are you lucky? Was luck on your side? How do you view that? Were you lucky?
Well, Brett, probably luck is not the right word. I would say, and also because look, I'm a Christian, and every decision that I make, I know is inspired and guided by by God. But look, for this discussion, it was deliberate. It was intentional. It's something that I have laid out, planned and thought through. And as I said, when I got that phone call from EFC, looking for somebody to lead the business, back in 2018, 2017, 2018, I thought it was a joke because I never imagined myself making that transition from traditional banking to microfinance. But then as I got into the conversation with the board members and the shareholders, it was getting more and more interesting. And I was beginning to realize just how much I could help to impact the business, how much I could help impact the people there, and how much I could help impact the economy of the country. So it was a decision, Brett. I wouldn't put it down to luck. I think it's deliberate thought, deliberate intention, hard work along the way, take some risks along the way, but most importantly, Brett, work for it, go for it. Don't sit and stand static. You've got to be in motion. You've got to be moving forward and attacking those opportunities that come through along the way.
That's a great point, Bedah. Let's talk a little bit more about that. So the key, what I'm pulling from this is that the best jobs, based on my global experience, are ones where you receive a call from somebody instead of you going out and knocking on doors and getting that. And why, in your case, do you think you got that call to go to work for EFC instead of you exploring? I mean, why do you think? I mean, these things don't happen. They don't just fall from the sky, right?
Yeah. Brett, look, it's an interesting question, and I'll tell you something that probably you didn't know, but just to sort of answer the question is,
sure.
Out of all the jobs that I've done now, on account, mining, Standard Chartered, Barclays, it was calls. I got calls. I don't know how that happens, but I think when you build a track record, Brett, when you build a credible track record, when you build credibility, that is the form of insurance because the record is there to show. And so, yeah, I've never had to get into a job where I applied. I get calls and for me, first of all, that's humbling, obviously, but more than that, I think it's down to the track record that you build for yourself, because that forms as a form of insurance. And obviously my advice, especially to all the early and mid-career, entrants is, build a track record that's going to serve you well in the future. So it wasn't down to luck, Brett. Just hard work and focus.
No, I think that's great. I happen to agree with that. Let's drill down a little bit deeper. When you say build a track record, so because a typical viewer right now, some of them will say, well, yeah, I do my job right, but why am I not getting a call, right? And have you done anything to market yourself, not to new companies, but you have a great track record, but have you done anything to market that track record even to your current company, to people, to your network, anything along those lines?
No, Brett. I mean, usually, first of all, I think patience also is an important virtue. I mean, the call will come. So don't sit there and say, I've done everything, but the call is not coming. The call will come eventually. But most importantly is that usually track record is track record. I mean, it will get out there. You don't necessarily have to market yourself. You have to market yourself, but you don't have to. Because the track record is something that is there for everybody to see through the networks, first layer networks, second level networks, third level, and everything. So that is there for everybody to see. If you are fortunate to work in a business, your peers are seeing what you do, your bosses are seeing what you do, your subordinates are seeing what you do. That in itself begins to replicate across. And trust me, again, that track record over time finds its way through the system, and you will get that call usually.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to articulate it. Thanks for that. Bedah, let's talk a little bit about weeds. Okay, weeds in the garden. Things that happen. We all, as humans, there negative thinking, or thinking that something not great is going to happen. We all have to deal with that from time to time, right? And it really comes down to not if we have to deal with it, but if there's something negative in our own minds that maybe we're getting in our own way of doing something. How do you deal with continuing to progress your career and do the great things that you've mentioned in this discussion? But at the same time, how do you fend off those negative feelings and pull those weeds out, get them out of your life?
Yeah, no, thank you, Brett. I'll share my thoughts around that. I think, first of all, Brett, especially when you function at the top of the business as a CEO or CX level, I think you need to first of all ensure you get the right people. I think nothing comes close to the value of the team around you. But even then, you will still get some weeds, some noise in the system. But one of the most important things, I think, as a leader for me that I found is to, just listening and make every effort to try and help the team, members of the team that could be falling behind and creating unnecessary friction in the teams. Obviously, you also have to be decisive, and that's one, I think, important quality of a leader as well. You have to be very decisive in terms of, you don't want detractors, you don't want weeds. So if a decision is such that you must get rid of the weeds, then you have to do that. As long as that is done fairly and objectively and transparently, objectively, I think there's no room for weeds, and the context of a real professional environment is no room for mediocrity, because, that just takes everybody back. So you've got to be decisive, right, and deal with the weeds. Otherwise, you're not going to succeed.
Is success contagious in your view?
I think so. In my case, yes, it is very contagious. And Brett, by the way, I've done 4 psychometric tests over my career. I think I did 2 in Standard Chartered and another 2 in Barclays. And for some reason, I come out as a very, success obsessed individual. But again, success, Brett, is defined in many different ways. It's much more an internal feeling. This is not about social status. It's not about money. It's really more about where you find, happiness, where you find satisfaction, where you find fulfillment. And in this case, look, I'm running a relatively smaller outfit compared to the larger blue chip outfits. But look, as I said earlier on, the fulfillment, I've never felt as fulfilled before. And I put down to a lot of factors. The team that I'm leading, that is supporting me. The business model itself, with the learning that comes with it and what I can give to the business. And most importantly, the quality of the board and the shareholders. I just have never had this experience before, the support that I get from the board and the shareholders. But again, it goes back to what I said. You've got to build the credibility first. You've got to be believable. You've got to be, so you build that credibility, and then everything kind of just falls into place. So it's a combination of things.
I think that's a great point. And I'll just add to that is that, for those watching, you will get that phone call that Bedah is talking about, because things do fall in place. And my advice on top of that is, don't always spend all of your time thinking about how you're going to do something. Spend most of your thought time around what you want, specifically define it and design it, right? And become passionate about it, work hard, build the track record, all the things that Bedah is talking about in this discussion. And things will happen. Things will fall out of the sky, instead of always being worried about what one person thinks of you. And if you think you're going to, be getting that phone call will probably happen when you least expect it. Right, Bedah?
Absolutely, Brett. Be patient, be focused, be confident. It will come.
Yeah, that's always happened with me. It's happened at moments that I never would have guessed, even in hindsight, that they would have happened. That phone just rings, and so I think that's important as well. Bedah, how do you build confidence in yourself to keep going? Because obviously now you're a CEO. We've talked a lot about the past and the present, but if you look to the future, how do you maintain that confidence level? I know you're happy, successful, you love what you're doing. That's wonderful. What are your plans to keeping it going?
Yeah, one of the things, Brett, one of the techniques I use to build my confidence in different situations, even in my personal life, is preparation. I think I learned to prepare well for any task. So when I prepare well, that is, usually very good for my confidence. The second thing, obviously, is keep learning. I think there's nothing more important than subject matter knowledge. You've got to be confident of what you're gonna be talking about, or what you're gonna be doing. So I think subject matter knowledge, keep reading, keep working, keep learning. Usually the confidence will come along with that. And thirdly, Brett, I think you've got to have the faith. You've got to have the faith and the confidence to face the task at hand, and some foresight as well. The ability to see what could emerge around the corner. Usually that allows you to face whatever you face in the future with a lot more confidence, because you could probably have foreseen all of it or part of it. So that foresight as well is a good quality to help boost the confidence.
Yeah, building belief and having faith in oneself, even through you'll remember an analogy we used to always talk about is, you take off in an airplane and it's a bit bumpy, it's cloudy, you got your seatbelt on, but that pilot's in a few minutes is going to find blue sky, right? And get out of that, bumpy choppy, I think they call it choppy air, get out of that choppy air into blue sky. And I think that, that's something that I'm hoping will inspire many of the people watching this, hearing your story, Bedah, is finding that blue sky, because it's there. And sometimes you just have to hang with it. And using your words, you have to prepare well, and you have to, make sure that you establish that track record so that you can, properly fly that plane to the blue sky. So I think that's terrific. And so Bedah, last question for you today is around inspiration, and what inspires you to keep going? And it's a broad question. It can be in life, not just career. What inspires you to keep going?
Yeah, good question. On a personal level, Brett, it's the impact that I make on other people, whether this is at the office, whether this is with my family at home, whether this is a church or whatever social environment. I think for me, I'm driven more by the impact that I can, especially in my latter stages of my career. My focus is completely different. It's about impacting, the next person to me. I spoke to you earlier about, some of the stuff I'm doing with my wife here, private art collection, working closely with the artists that, impacting them. And for me, that drives a lot of satisfaction now, over and above anything else.
Yeah, you've the whole time I've known you, way over a decade, is that you've always had balance in your life. And I know that's incredibly important to you. And I think that's one of the things that makes you an inspiring leader. The time we worked together, I was inspired by you. And I think that's just wonderful. And tell us a little bit about the art that you have behind you there. It's fascinating. People have been looking at this for a half hour now, and I'd love for them to hear a little bit more about that.
Yeah, this is another example of passion, Brett. We spoke about passion and drive before. So my wife and I and our 4 kids are very passionate about art. So we've been collecting art for the last 15, 16 years. And now we have a collection of about 400 pieces of paintings, sculptures, and stone and wood
400,
and metal.
400? You said
400 pieces.
Wow.
So it's I think it's probably one of the largest private collections in Zambia now. But this is all out of passion. There's no commercial motive at all. This is about you like to do something, you want to impact the people around you. And by the way, we open it up for people to come and see and get impacted in many different ways, whether admiring the aesthetics or learning some. That is passion. I'm driven by making that difference in a unique way.
You certainly are, Bedah, and I think that's why you're a winner and a champion. You always find a way to do it, and it's driven by those internal passions that are balanced. And I think that's really key. And I want to make sure that the viewers know in 30 minutes, it's impossible for everybody to get to know you, but there's a lot to be learned from that internal passion that's balanced, because it really comes through, right, in the personal life. That makes you successful in your career when you're happy personally, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's good. Bedah, I'd like to thank you. We're about out of time, and I guess it's probably about dinner time where you're at. And I'd like to thank you very much for taking the time to be on the program, and most importantly, to share what's driven you to the top, and the fact that you've been able to, over your career, to impact literally tens of thousands of people, not just in Zambia, but in other countries in Africa. And that impact has been profound. And I really appreciate you taking the time today to be on the Packard Network.
Thank you, Brett, and thank you to you for the work you're doing, Brett. This is phenomenal. I haven't obviously met you in a decade now, but I can see that the seed that you planted back here with the Zambia team is bearing fruit for you. So I hope you are delighted, and hope you are proud of that. And please continue doing what you're doing. You've impacted many of us, and so I'm sure the fruits are going to continue bearing. So thank you for the privilege to appear on your network, Brett, and all the best to you.
That's very good. I look forward to having you back in the future, Bedah. And just a final word for all of my friends in the wonderful country of Zambia. I cherish that time that we had together, and I'm so pleased to see, as Bedah mentioned, all of you blossoming, and your potential is enormous. I'm going to be focusing the Packard Network a lot in the future on Zambia. And so to the global audience, we're kind of making our way around the world, but there will be a special focus on Zambia for the reasons that Bedah mentioned. And actually, next week, I'm taking 1 week off from the Packard Network, taking a bit of a break. But the following week, I'll be back in Zambia, and I'll be announcing the following week who my special guest will be. But I'll look forward to a fascinating woman from Zambia who will walk us through something very unique that's going on and transformative in the country. So with that, Bedah, thanks very much. And thanks to all of you for tuning in today.